Assalamu alaikum, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine. Welcome to day 13 of Qur'an Journaling. Today we are focusing on Ayat number 14 of Surah Kahf. I have my Ibn Kathir Tafsir book and this is going to come in very handy for today's Ayah. This particular story that's mentioned here is also mentioned in one of the tafsirs that I listened to, and you can find the links to those playlists in the description box below. I also have my word-for-word Qur'an. This one has the word-for-word translation as well as the Arabic and the translation in English on the side. I also have one of my favorite resources for this series, and that is my Qur'an notebook. This has the Qur'an on one side, the English translation on the other side, as well as blank spaces for you to write your notes, reflections, and tafsir. These books come with 3 juz in one volume, and I am working on Surah Kahf, which is in part in juz 15 as well as in juz 16. So I have 2 volumes of this Qur'an notebook. I also have my personal journal here. This is made with drawing paper that I had spiral bound at a local office supply store. And here I'm including my drawings and my Qur'an, my reflections, and the translation for the ayah that I am working on. This has been a really engaging process for me. I'm really enjoying this, but I am finding it quite challenging at the same time as well. So I begin this whole process by adding notes to my Qur'an notebook. I'm adding in some extra sheets of paper because I find that once I start writing, I have a lot to say, a lot of reflections, and right now, each one of these ayahs is requiring an entire sheet of paper. So I've just cut into thirds a piece of like transparency or tracing paper, and that way I can write my notes, and it's kind of thin, and I just taped it in so it's easy to flip over. I've tried to stagger the pages just a little bit so that each page that I flip over is easy. The last one I added a little tab just so that I can flip that last page over as well. So I'm beginning this process by focusing on a couple of Arabic words in this ayah, and I started doing this recently and I really like this approach. And granted, every page has had a bit of change and it's been unique how I've approached this project, but right now I'm adding a couple of Arabic words and going into depth about them and adding a little bit of my personal reflections along with the stories that are included and references included to help understand these words in depth. Ayah 14 reads, "And we made their hearts firm and strong with the light of faith in Allah, and bestowed upon them patience to bear the separation of kith and kin and dwellings, etc. When they stood up and said, 'Our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Never shall we call upon any illah, God, other than Him. If we did, we should indeed have uttered an enormity in disbelief.'" This translation is from the word-for-word Qur'an, and it includes some parentheses with additional information. And remember that the English translation is a reflection of both the meaning and the words within the Qur'an. So the Qur'an is itself in Arabic, and if you are new to tafsir and understanding the Qur'an, and I am as well, and I remind myself that the pursuit of learning the Arabic language, the Qur'an Arabic language, is so important in us understanding the Qur'an as well. So I've written my notes regarding this ayah and specifically focusing on the idea of making their hearts strong, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made their hearts strong. And this follows the previous ayah number 13, which says, "And it is we who relate to you their story in truth. Indeed, they were youth who believed in their Lord, and we increased them in guidance." So they were already had the nature to be guided. They were already guided, and in their hearts and in their minds, they believed that the traditions that were existing in their community were wrong with their belief in something other than Allah. So they were already apart from their community in their belief, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased them in guidance, and it was somewhat necessary because then they were standing in front of the king, or in a sense, they were on trial, or they were now being challenged with, what do you mean you're not coming to these festivals? Or what do you mean that you don't believe in the same gods that we do? And my understanding based on the Tafsir is that this was almost a form of treason if they were not going to believe in what the king believed. And so in this moment of standing up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala previously increased them in guidance and now made their hearts firm. So this, if we imagine them now, a group of youth who, based on the Tafsir, may not have known each other. They may have been individuals who all came to the same conclusion that this idea of worshiping multiple creators or multiple deities is incorrect, and what their communities are doing is incorrect, and they're at a festival and they end up leaving this kind of disbelief and they end up separating themselves, and then they all collect and find themselves and speak about what they believe. And my personal thought is that I imagine that must have been also quite a scary experience, because you don't know who you're speaking to if you're going to suddenly give yourself away, in a sense of reveal what you actually believe. So I imagine that even speaking amongst themselves to begin with might have been a scary, challenging situation, that Allah also increased their guidance in that moment and firmed their heart in that moment too, to speak the truth amongst themselves, and then speak the truth amongst their family and community, and speak the truth in front of the king, where this was not taken lightly, of course, since we then learn that they have to escape and seek protection in a cave, which means that their life was in danger for speaking out against the king and the prevailing belief at the time. So this ayah is quite in depth, and I am summarizing some of the information that I have gathered and learned through listening to the Tafsir, through reading the Tafsir, and through my own contemplation. So I encourage you to look deeper into this ayah, because for me, this ayah and the previous ayah have been very profound and have been on my mind a lot since doing this reflection, because I see this, and we've seen this in the last few ayahs, that the youth, and this is a reminder for us, that they do something in this world, and also they pray to Allah. And so they began with guidance, and then Allah increased them in guidance. And so we begin with what we have, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy upon us and increases us in that, so that we may be successful. But it comes with us doing. There's an action, and there's also a trust and a prayer and a dua in Allah to help guide us and to make us firm in our belief. And the heart is mentioned here because it is the heart that has been made firm and strong and settled and calm. There's a lot that's related to how the heart felt for these youth, so that they had, in a sense, the courage and the calmness to stand up to the king and to have clear and concise words. And that part is really beautiful. One other thing as we end this reflection is that the king himself is not mentioned in the ayah, but what is mentioned, and we will see that later on, is their pet, their dog. Their dog is mentioned, and yet the king is not. And there's wisdom behind that, and I find that to be a really beautiful way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has narrated this story for us, in the sense that this little animal has more, in a sense, prestige than this king who is, absolutely absurd in his beliefs. So for the drawing and the illustration, I did some of Allah's creations, because this ayah refers to Allah being the creator of the heavens and the earth. And so I did the earth at the bottom, on the side, the moon on one side, 3 of the planets closest to the sun, and some stars, so that I had plenty of room for all of my writing and my reflections, which are also included in the Qur'an notebook. I hope that you're enjoying this series, and if you are Qur'an journaling alongside with me, please tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your work. Some of you have already done so, and it's absolutely stunning. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video. You can find the link down in the description box below. I have all of the materials that I'm using for this series, as well as links to the materials that I'm using. And if you'd like to see how we're Qur'an journaling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.